The biggest tech conference in Manhattan had never seen anything quite like it. Olivia Bennett, 28 years old and already the face on 3 business magazine covers that quarter, laughed out loud when a single father walked into the VIP demo floor carrying a laptop so old the paint had chipped away at every corner. In front of dozens of investors and press cameras, she said the thing looked like it couldn't load her company's AI interface without catching fire. The man didn't argue. He sat down. He typed a few lines. 3 seconds later, every screen in the control center turned red, and Olivia Bennett went completely silent as the warning message bloomed across her own internal system. Nathaniel Brooks was 34 years old, and he had spent the last 2 years learning how to want very little. He wasn't always that way. There had been a version of Nathaniel that walked into rooms like the one at the Manhattan Convention Center and felt the electricity of it, the sharp suits, the pitch decks glowing on polished screens, the smell of ambition and expensive coffee mixing into something that tasted like the future. He had been one of the youngest systems, security architects in his field, a quiet technician who had somehow built something that mattered. A multi-layer authentication framework that he had designed from first principles, working across 3 weeks without sleep in a rented apartment in Austin. It wasn't flashy. It was the kind of thing that kept people's data safe without anyone noticing it was there, which was exactly the point. That framework had been adopted quietly, through licensing arrangements he never fully understood because he trusted the wrong people by several enterprise platforms. His name was never attached to any of them. The betrayal had come in the form of a data breach at a firm where he was a senior consultant. The breach happened 3 levels above his access. The investigation took 6 weeks. The press needed a name to print, and his former employer gave them one. Not because Nathaniel had failed, because he was the cleanest target a contractor without corporate armor, without a PR team, without the institutional weight to push back. He lost the consulting contract. He lost the speaking engagements that had started to come in. He lost, in the same brutal season, his wife not to betrayal, but to a car accident on a rain-slick interstate in November, 3 years ago now, an event so fast and so final that even now he could not fully map its edges in his mind. What remained was a 6-year-old girl named Lily Brooks, who had her mother's eyes and her father's habit of staying very calm when things went wrong. Nathaniel had rebuilt something modest from the debris. He did freelance security work, firmware audits, data recovery, short-term advisory contracts with mid-sized companies who couldn't afford a full-time CISO. He worked from home. He made Lily pancakes on Tuesday mornings. He drove her to school in a car that had 2 dents in the back panel and a heater that worked fine. He did not need the world to know who he was. He needed Lily to have dinner on the table and someone she trusted at pickup. He carried the old laptop everywhere. He had built it himself over the course of several months, salvaging the chassis, selecting each internal component with the precision of someone who understood what the components were actually doing. The case was scratched, and the paint at the corners had worn through to bare aluminum. The machine underneath it was surgical. Custom partition layout. Hardened kernel, toolsets calibrated for exactly the work he did. He trusted it the way a surgeon trusts a particular instrument, not because it looked good on a tray, but because it had never once let him down. He had not planned to be at the Bennett Dynamics conference. He had gotten a call 3 days earlier from Marcus Webb, an old colleague who had moved into enterprise security consulting, and who had been asking quiet questions about the Bennett Dynamics platform for weeks. Marcus had found something in the architecture documentation that worried him. An authentication gateway configuration that looked, from the outside, like it might have a structural problem at the session token level. He couldn't be certain without a closer look. He had asked Nathaniel to come, attend, watch, and give an informal read. Nathaniel had said no twice. The 3rd time Marcus called, Lily's babysitter had just texted to cancel for the following morning. Nathaniel was already going to have to rearrange his day. He looked at Lily across the breakfast table, at her drawing a horse on a paper towel with a purple marker, and he thought about what Marcus had described. If the system had the vulnerability Marcus suspected, and if it was being demonstrated live in front of hundreds of people, someone in that room might notice before Nathaniel did. He took the invitation. He brought Lily because there was no one else, and told her they were going to a big building where people talked about computers, which she received with the same thoughtful nod she gave to most adult explanations of the world. The convention center lobby was glass and steel and exactly the kind of space that made Nathaniel feel the particular loneliness of being someone who once belonged in rooms like this and no longer wanted to. The registration desk for VIP technical attendees was staffed by 3 people who wore earpieces and had clearly been briefed on the profile of the expected attendees. Nathaniel did not match it. He was wearing a blue button-down shirt that had been ironed that morning but had not survived the commute. His laptop bag was canvas, dark green, the kind sold at army surplus stores. Lily walked beside him holding his hand, wearing a red jacket and carrying a small backpack with a cartoon rabbit on it, looking around at the atrium with the calm curiosity of a child who does not yet know she is out of place anywhere. The registration staff were polite in the specific, cautious way that people are polite when they suspect a mistake has been made. They examined his invitation code twice. A supervisor was called. The supervisor checked a secondary system and found the code valid. Marcus had registered him properly, but the delay had drawn the attention of the people nearby. A young engineer from Bennett Dynamics, standing near the technical access corridor with a badge that read Systems, caught sight of the laptop bag and said something to the colleague beside him. It was almost under his breath. Almost. Something like, "That machine probably crashes trying to run a spreadsheet." His colleague laughed. Brief and reflexive. Lily heard it. Nathaniel felt her hand tighten slightly around his fingers. He crouched down to her level, right there on the polished floor of the Manhattan Convention Center lobby, and said quietly that it was fine, and that they were going to go inside now, and that she could stand right next to him the whole time. She nodded, already moving past it, already trusting him completely. Olivia Bennett came through the lobby 12 minutes later, trailing the conclusion of a press walkthrough. She was exactly as described in every profile written about her. Composed, direct, with the particular magnetism of someone who has learned to inhabit authority young. She wore a dark blazer and moved through the space like she had designed it herself. She stopped because a small cluster of people had gathered near the technical corridor entrance, and Olivia had trained herself to notice when her events produced unexpected friction. Nathaniel had been attempting, again, to explain to the registration supervisor that he needed to speak with the technical team before the demo began, that he had a concern about the platform architecture that was time-sensitive. He was not raising his voice. He never raised his voice. This was one of his dominant qualities and also, occasionally, his problem. He communicated with the same even tone whether he was ordering coffee or describing a critical systems failure, which meant that people sometimes mistook his calm for casualness. Olivia assessed the scene in under 4 seconds. A man in a wrinkled shirt with a worn laptop bag and a child beside him, asking for access to her technical floor, minutes before the most important product demonstration of her company's young life. She read it as she had been trained by the industry to read things, through the lens of pattern recognition, and the pattern here was someone trying to insert himself into a moment he had no business being near. She said it without real cruelty, though the absence of cruelty didn't make it land any softer. She said that her company ran enterprise AI infrastructure, and this wasn't a repair shop, and that perhaps whatever he needed could be addressed through the public support channel after the event concluded. 1 or 2 people in earshot smiled. Nathaniel looked at her directly. His expression did not change. He said that he wasn't there to cause a disruption, that he had a valid invitation, and that there was a specific vulnerability in the platform architecture that needed to be seen before the demo went live. Olivia's eyes moved to the laptop bag, then back to his face. She said that her security team had run comprehensive checks. Then she moved on, because she had 300 people waiting for her and 11 minutes to the start of the presentation. At the edge of the lobby, Lily looked up at her father, and then down at the bag on his shoulder. She was old enough to understand, in the way children are, that something unkind had just happened. She didn't say anything. She put her hand back in his. The main demonstration hall held 340 seats, all filled, plus standing room along the back wall where the press photographers had staked their positions. The stage was flanked by 4 large displays, synchronized to a central dashboard, and the dashboard was currently showing the Bennett Dynamics AI platform in its pre-demo idle state. Clean lines, deep blue interface, the kind of design that cost a great deal of money to look effortless. Olivia walked to the stage to sustained and genuine applause. She was good at this part. She had the ability to speak about technical systems in language that made investors feel like poets and engineers feel like philosophers, which was a rare gift and the source of much of her company's early momentum. She began with the architecture overview, moved to the use case breakdown, and arrived at the live demonstration with precision timing. The system was supposed to show how the Bennett Dynamics AI platform could ingest, process, and analyze enterprise data in real time, routing queries through its core authentication layer, and returning outputs with a latency profile that would make the competing platforms look geological by comparison. For the first 90 seconds, it performed exactly as promised. Nathaniel was standing near the back of the hall, Lily sitting on the floor beside him with a granola bar and a small notebook she had brought for drawing. He was watching the secondary monitor, a smaller display, angled toward the technical team station on the right side of the stage, and he was watching the behavior of the authentication responses scrolling in a narrow log panel at the bottom of the screen. He had seen something like this pattern once before, years ago, in a platform audit he had conducted for a financial services company. The latency spikes were not random. They were clustering in a way that was consistent with one specific failure mode. A gateway configured to accept certain token classes as valid even after expiration. The log flashes confirmed it. There was an endpoint visible in the response chain that should not have been appearing in a controlled demo environment, an internal diagnostics route, the kind that existed for debugging, and was supposed to be walled off entirely from any presentation-facing traffic. It meant the demo environment was not isolated the way it should have been. It meant the system was operating close enough to the production architecture that a properly formatted request to that diagnostics endpoint could interact with real internal pathways. It meant that anyone in the room who happened to know what they were looking at and who happened to have a reason to act on it was looking at an open door. Nathaniel moved toward the technical team station along the side wall. A young engineer there, visibly stressed, was monitoring the same logs. Nathaniel spoke quietly. He said there was a diagnostics endpoint showing in the response chain that shouldn't be visible, and that the authentication tokens on the demo account hadn't been properly scoped. The engineer looked at him with the expression of someone who does not have the bandwidth for this particular conversation. Nathaniel said, "If you don't close that path in the next few minutes, someone will find it." The engineer said everything had been checked, then turned back to his screen. Nathaniel straightened. He looked at Lily. She looked back at him with a calm that was entirely her own, and he thought, as he sometimes did in moments that required a decision, about what he was going to tell her about this later. He moved to a position beside a secondary network access junction, a small panel built into the wall for technical staff, that a previous engineer had left accessible while routing a display cable. The junction provided a connection point on the event's internal technical network, the same network the demo platform was running on. He opened the laptop. The script he ran was 11 lines long. He had written it himself, months ago, for a different audit, a tool to probe authentication, endpoint behavior, confirm token scope, and document access anomalies. It did not extract data. It did not modify anything. It queried the environment and reported what it found. And what it found, it reported by pushing a structured alert to the administrative interface of whatever system it was connected to. The script ran in under 4 seconds. The administrative interface on the technical team's monitor received the alert. The the monitor was due to a display routing error that Nathaniel had noticed from across the room, and that no one on the technical team had caught, mirroring its output to one of the 4 large stage displays. The large display changed. The blue interface disappeared. A red alert band appeared at the top of the screen. Below it, formatted in the clinical language of a systems diagnostic report, was a short list. 1 open diagnostics endpoint. 1 overscoped token. 2 internal directory paths accessible through the demo account that should have required production-level credentials to reach. The hall went quiet. Not the polite, attentive quiet of an audience following a presentation. The absolute, sucked dry quiet of 340 people processing something they had not expected to see. Olivia stopped speaking mid-sentence. She turned toward the display, then toward the technical team station. Then, because she was very good at following lines of cause and effect even under pressure, toward Nathaniel, who was standing beside the wall panel with his laptop open, looking at the screen with the same expression he used for everything. The security staff moved toward him in under 10 seconds. Nathaniel closed the laptop. He did not move to leave.